Okay. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Jason Hasty. Today we are talking on ProTax T1. So today will be the T1 newer user introduction. I'm actually doing a webinar tomorrow for the advanced or the experienced user in ProTax. So if you haven't signed up for that and you're interested, please go to your ProAdvisor portal for that. I will be explaining how to do that as well a little bit later. All right, yes. So my name is Jason Hasty. I'm a CPA CA. I got my CA way back in 2001. I got my master's in accounting the year before from the University of Saskatchewan, and I have been doing taxes for over 20 years now. Good times. This year it's a little bit interesting and a little bit different with the capital gains stuff. So I'm actually going to be talking a little bit about that today as well. Okay, so some information about today's webinar. It's an hour and 15 minutes long. It includes a combination of instruction and Q&A. So the way that I like to do my webinars is have you ask questions throughout the webinar. I know sometimes it can be a little bit but I find that then we get the questions answered as I'm covering the content. So please feel free to direct your questions to today's webinar, and I'm happy to answer that throughout. We also have Mario and Luke helping out today and answering questions if I don't get to them as well. So you'll see those answers in the Q&A section. Handouts and CPD certifications will be emailed out to you post or after today's presentation, so please download them for your records. I think you also have access to the manual, the comprehensive manual that goes more in depth with ProTax than I am doing in today's and tomorrow's webinars. So yes, please limit your questions to today's webinar content. And as a note on CPDs, those of you who are getting continuing professional development credits, today's course is eligible for 1 CPD credit. Your CPD certificate will be emailed out to you after today's presentation. As a disclaimer, all information in this webinar is for educational and informational purposes only. Please do not consider it legal or tax advice. This webinar, its contents and presenter are not to be relied upon for tax treatment of items reflected on tax returns. So I will go into some tax issues today, but again, do not rely on it for advice. Okay, so getting into today's agenda, we're going to start off talking about Books to Tax. That is Intuit's full ecosystem that goes all the way from your client's bookkeeping or their monthly or daily bookkeeping all the way to tax return preparation. That's primarily for clients that you have that are self-employed or have corporations as well. Today we're talking about T1, so we will be jumping a little bit into self-employed. We'll be doing that a little bit more tomorrow. And the Books to Tax we'll be talking about being the full ecosystem. And then I'm going to go through an introduction to ProTax. So answering questions such as why ProTax? Why would you want to use ProTax? I am a huge fan of the cloud, so we'll be talking about that. How to buy ProTax. And then we'll be talking about the tax years that ProTax covers, both the T1 and the T2. And very importantly, how to get help. In today's world, you want to be able to access help really easily and quickly, especially as accounting professionals. We really want to be able to get help as quickly as possible so that it reduces the time that we have to spend figuring stuff out. And then we'll be looking at setup and navigation of ProTax. And following that, we will be looking at importing T1 files. So if you are importing files from another tax program, we'll be covering the basics of that. We will also be looking at a basic T1. I'm hoping I don't talk too much and we have enough time I always like to go into a live demo at the end so that you can actually see what the ProTax environment looks like rather than just being screenshots in your webinar today. Okay, as mentioned, I'm also teaching a webinar tomorrow, and that is on the Advanced ProTax T1. So things that we're going to be covering tomorrow are T1 AFR, so that's autofill my return, which is a huge time saver, or as should I mention his name, Donald Trump would say, huge time saver. But yeah, seriously though, it is a really big time saver in filling out personal tax returns, and it comes included in ProTax. Then we're going to be going through coupled returns, so spousal returns, as well as dependents. So adding on a dependent onto the tax return environment. And the goal with all of that is optimizing tax savings. So whether it be the coupled returns or the dependents, in coupled returns, specifically pension splitting. So we're going to be going through that as well. Judy is asking, is this going to be mostly about ProTax? I use profile, do not say why I have to have both. So Judy, yes, today's webinar is on ProTax. ProTax uses the same tax engine as Profile, but it is the cloud-based version of Profile. So yeah, I mean, there might be situations that you'd want to use both, but primarily I would say go with one or the other. ProTax is the newer product and it is cloud-based. Okay, then tomorrow we'll also be going through ProTax productivity tools. We want to really enhance our productivity and our efficiency as well. So using ProTax to do that. And then for those self-employed clients that you might have, we're going to be going through a T2125, which is the business activity statement, kind of like the profit and loss from QuickBooks Online Accountant, taking that all the way through to ProTax and being able to save a lot in the mapping and filing that through ProTax. Vicky's asking if there is a certification program for ProTax. I don't believe there actually is a certification program developed yet for ProTax like there is for QuickBooks Online. Basically, the training happens through webinars like this. But yeah, no specific certification program that I know of. Mario and Luke, I'm not sure if you are aware of any program, but I don't think there is one yet. Vicky, I would say, if that's something you're interested in, reach out to Intuit and say that you are interested in that because Intuit takes clients' feedback very seriously. And so I would say, definitely, if you're interested in that, reach out to them and let them know that that would be great to have something like that developed. I mean, I would love to see that as well. So, okay, so we're going to start today with Books to Tax. We're going to be looking at an overview of the full ecosystem where you can have clients' bookkeeping used or bookkeeping files used to prepare the tax return. And it can really save you a ton of time. Books to Tax does things like helps you stay on top of your client's month-end tasks. So whether it be period end or month end, so if it's quarter end or month end, Books to Tax looks at that. It can help you with account analysis, reconciliations, making sure those are all done. It can also help you find and troubleshoot accounting mistakes or oversights. So things that are done in the monthly bookkeeping environment that are maybe a mistake or an oversight can help you find and troubleshoot those. Books to Tax also does things like allows you to create period end checklists for your team. So I should actually jump back a little bit. So QuickBooks Online Accountant is the free app or program that is available to all bookkeepers and accountants. It's absolutely free. There's no monthly fees. What QuickBooks Online Accountant gives you is it gives you a QuickBooks Online account for your own firm, for your own company that is absolutely free. So it allows you to fully do your books for your firm absolutely free. Plus, it gives you access to this environment, which is the Books to Tax environment. That is also where you access ProTax through as well. So absolutely free. Just Google QuickBooks Online Accountant. Make sure you are on the Intuit website, and then you can sign up for that absolutely free. And it allows you to do all of the things like I talked about so far. I talked about creating period and checklists for your team to follow. So as QBOA, you have access yourself, but then you can give your team access to your different client files as well. So it's for anybody within your firm that's on your team. They can also have access as well for free. And there's all the different levels of access as well. So it's so if you want certain team members to have access to client files, but not other team members, you can absolutely do that. If you want certain team members to have access to your own firm's books, you can do that, as well as restricting access to other team members as well. In addition, Books to Tax also helps you prepare the year-end working paper file. So for those of you that are used to working in programs like Caseware, things like that, Caseware is what I learned when I articled at my firm the firm that I articled with back in the early 2000s. We used Caseware. So preparing those year-end working paper files that then allows you to do the financial statements and the tax return. Books to Tax also includes that. As part of the team environment, Books to Tax also lets you monitor your team's progress on all period end tasks. So we'll be going through that today very briefly as part of the whole ProTax environment. And then, of course, Books to Tax allows you to start the tax process. Now, something to note that's really important is that your clients do not have to be on QuickBooks Online to use ProTax. ProTax allows you to import tax returns from other tax programs. It allows you to create tax returns from scratch. So your clients do not have to be on QuickBooks Online to use ProTax. Okay, so the next slides are going to describe the 3 tabs that are available in the Books to Tax environment. As we can see on the left, we have Books Review, Work Papers, and Income Tax. The Books Review tool focuses on common, but the ones that might be tricky bookkeeping areas, such as incomplete transactions. It looks at reconciliations, account balances. It also lists the key tasks so that you can very quickly, talking about that efficiency side, you can very quickly tie up any loose ends, and it also helps you prioritize your work. Other things that you can do, you can create and customize your own tasks, so you don't have to just rely on the tasks that are there. There are templated tasks as well, but you have full ability to create your own tasks. You can collaborate on transactions with your client directly in QuickBooks. So that's something that I like highlighting a lot, is that collaboration with your clients. I am absolutely terrible at emails, and client communication gets lost for me in emails all of the time. So, you're trying to, look, for an email relating to client. I use keywords to search, but directly in QuickBooks Online Accountant, you can communicate right with your client back and forth in a very secure environment. You can send and receive messages. You can upload documents, and we'll talk about the advantages of ProTax and the cloud environment, because those documents are available to you 24/7. Connie's asking, where in QBOA do you find Books to Tax? That is a really, really good question, Connie, because if you are in the QuickBooks Online environment, you won't see the Books to Tax option on your left-hand side. So you've got the toolbar on your left-hand side that shows the different environment, the different options. So if you are just in the QuickBooks Online Accountant, but not in a client file, you won't find the Books to Tax. to uh, find that option on the left-hand bar, you actually have to be in your client's QuickBooks Online file. So ProTax itself, your clients do not have to be on QuickBooks Online, but if you are using the Books to Tax functionality, then your clients have to be in QuickBooks Online for that, because you have to be in your client's file, and that's all their bookkeeping. So that's what gives you access to look at their month-end bookkeeping, look at their period end, look at the year end, all of that side of things. So that's where you would find it. And I'll go through that today on how to find it, because it is a little bit confusing, but the big thing to remember is that you have to be in your client's file, and then you will see the Books to Tax option on the left-hand side. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so when you launch Books Review, you can choose to work in either the monthly or the cleanup workspace. So both of them include the following tabs, as you can kind of see there on the bottom. Transaction review, final review, and wrap up. As well as account reconciliation there. The one thing that the cleanup also has is it has the setup function. So that is when you are setting up your client's QuickBooks Online files. You also have that setup tab included to you, for you. Okay, so going through the setup tab, what that allows you to do is you can then quickly adjust the opening account balances for your clients. So oftentimes we get clients that, have had their books somewhere else. They've got an existing company. So you have to enter those opening balances. That's what you can do through the setup tab. In that, you can see as bubble 1 signifies here, it adjusts the equity account. In this case, it's retained earnings based on the different adjustments that you make through all of the relevant accounts, such as the bank accounts that we can see here. Okay, so this is basically the screen here. You click the checkbox to select it for adjustment. Then you click Add Adjustment to record the adjusting journal entry. So that's how it adjusts that. You can also use the clock icon. This clock icon that you see in bubble number 5, you will see that throughout Books to Tax. That indicates the status of your tasks. So you can mark a task as done, maybe to do, or waiting. So if you're for example, waiting on information from your client or a team member, you can adjust that status as well. Okay, so we've talked about the first tab. Now we're going to be looking at the at the work papers and doing an overview on that. So for both your T1 and your T returns, work papers, which is found only in QuickBooks Online Accountant, gives you, they say, the one-stop solution for compiling, analyzing, and summarizing your client's year-end financial results. So as we talked about with the books review, that's more on month-end or period end. Work papers looks at the year-end, so it's the year-end preparation. Work papers is what also works seamlessly with ProTax. And because of this, that allows you to skip manual entry. So you no longer have to manually enter things into the T2125, or if you're in the corporate environment, the Schedule 100 and 125. That can all be pushed through in work papers directly into ProTax. Same thing with having to import or export CSV files or Giphy files. So Giphy stands for General Index of Financial Information. That is what the CRA uses to look at the codes for the different chart of account files. Usman is saying, where can I find Books to Tax and Books Review? Okay, so again, yeah, Usman, so Books to Tax will be when you are in a client's QuickBooks Online file. And I'll show you how to do that later. It won't appear in your general QBOA file. You have to actually go up to the top and select your client's file. Once you select that, you will see on the left-hand side the Books to Tax. And that's where you'll find the Books Review. Okay, so this is what it looks like. So see on the left-hand side there, we have QB Accountant. We are in the client file here called Test and Example. So with example spelled in an interesting fashion. So this means we are in the client's file. We are in the client's QBO file. Once we are in that, on the left-hand side, we can see the books to tax option available to us. And that's where it gives us the books review, the work papers, and the income tax. So make sure you are opening your client's QuickBooks company, and then you can select books to tax, work papers from there. So hopefully that answers your question. So from the work papers workspace, you can do things like Bubble One shows selecting the fiscal year. So in a T1 environment, in a self-employed environment, your fiscal year is the calendar year, so it's always January to December. You can also choose the accounting method. In Canada, we have two methods of accounting, the cash basis or the accrual basis. But primarily in Canada, you have to use the accrual basis of accounting. In the US, it's a little bit different. You can use a cash basis for most clients, I think, or most small business clients anyways. In Canada, you have to use the accrual method of accounting unless your client is a farmer or a fisher. And I believe those are the two categories for cash basis. So books to tax allows you to select the method of tax of accounting. So obviously the accrual basis will be the primary one there. Then where are we? Okay, in the books to tax actions drop-down menu, this is where you can do things like carry forward a previous year file. You can export Giphy to an external tax solution. So that person who's talking about using Profile, you can still use books to tax within the QBOA environment if you're using Profile. So you can export files to Profile as well. So that'll kind of be like your Giphy import in Profile. You can also download the work papers pack. So that allows you to download a zip file to archive your year-end work. If you are sharing that work with, maybe an external accountant or something like that, it's really handy to be able to take all of those working paper files and download them into one zip file. And then, of course, you can lock the file after you've completed the year end, which is really handy and important so that you don't, so that there are no further changes to that year. Okay, so bubble number 4 is where you start a return in ProTax. Very easy to start that from the work papers environment. Okay, so next we're going to be going through what's shown in bubble number 5, the different sections within work papers themselves. One thing that I want to mention, sorry, just one moment. Yeah, I think we have those that I'm explaining each of those in a bit. If not, I'll come back to those. We put in here the work papers just so that you know that the new Canadian Standard on Related Services, CSRS 4200, which came into effect a couple of years ago. That was the largest change in 35 years for the accounting environment. Just the important thing to note here is that work papers is compliant with that as well. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to go back because we're in the income tax tab. I want to talk about the work papers tabs here. So here we see the year-end task in work papers. Things that you see below here, this is the task list. So this is the list that you can fully customize for the year-end tasks. Things like sending an engagement letter. I will talk about that a little bit in the letters part of ProTax. You absolutely want to send an engagement letter to your client and have that engagement letter signed or received back and signed and received back from the client. That outlines the engagement that you are doing for your client, and it avoids any kind of confusion or any kind of, minimizes the risk of disputes on what you are going to be doing for your client. So really, really important to send those engagement letters. That's just an example here under the items section. So the different task lists that you have. And then again, that clock appears on the right-hand side as the status of the task. We also have documents, attaching documents, really important to do obviously at year end, but the whole document ability to attach documents is really important in when you are working with a client, and is really handy when you're in a cloud-based environment because those documents are available to you 24/7 from anywhere in the world. The review and adjust tab, that talks about reviewing the year end and doing adjusting entries at year end. And then grouping and statements, that is for financial statements for your clients. So most of these are relevant to either T1 self-employed clients or T2 corporate tax clients. Okay, so the income tax tab, and I'll be talking about this a little bit later, this basically allows you to map the different chart of accounts into your client's tax return. Makes things super, super easy when you are moving over to ProTax. Okay, so now let's jump into ProTax, an overview on ProTax. So why ProTax? Why would you want to use it? Advantages include never needing to install, update, or manage your apps or your client's data. So gone are the days of having, a ton of different changes to the app, advancements. If you've got an iPhone, for example, your iPhone is constantly upgrading. The software is upgrading. I used to work at doing the IT in my accounting at the firm that I used to work at. And anytime we had an update to tax software or to accounting software, we'd have to go and install that on every user's desktop. So with a cloud-based environment like ProTax has, you never need to spend time fixing or updating those apps. And then all of your clients' data lives in the cloud in a secure bank-level encryption environment. And just note that security is so much better, in my mind anyway, than having a USB stick that can get lost, things like that. Also, ProTax uses the same Intuit tax engine that has literally powered millions of tax returns. So since the 1990s, when Intuit had its desktop-based software called Profile, that tax engine has carried forward and has filed millions of tax returns. That same tax engine has been used in ProTax over the last 4 or 5 years that ProTax has been in existence. So basically what that means is that you want to be able to trust the calculations that your tax software is doing, and you can absolutely trust that in that tax engine that ProTax has used for many, many years. Another advantage to using ProTax, you can quickly toggle between your client files and tax returns. So that's that books to tax environment. That's your QuickBooks Online client files, going and toggling between that and the ProTax software as well. And it's also operating system agnostic. So whether it's PC or Mac that you're working on, because you are working in a cloud-based browser environment, it doesn't matter what your operating system is. Gone are the days that you cannot use the tax software if you are using a Mac. Okay, so what modules does ProTax have? With ProTax comes 4 of the different modules. We've got T1, which we're talking about today, personal tax returns and self-employed person's tax returns if they're not incorporated. T2 for the corporate environment, T3 for trust returns, and FX, the forms expert that is used to file things like T4s, T5s, etc. You can also now use ProTax with bundles and suites. So that is an option that had been asked by a lot of users. And yes, now you can bundle ProTax. So you can bundle the different modules. And I'll talk about how ProTax works and how you purchase it as well. In ProTax, strongly encourage you to click on the What's New tab every once in a while. It will bring up all the new advancements, enhancements to ProTax. ProTax is evolving continually, and as I talked about, you never have to. There's no need to install or update ProTax because it's all done in the background. So if you want to see what is continually updated, that's in the What's New tab of ProTax. When you click on that, you will be taken to a website that shows you the ProTax release notes. And that goes, I think, back in chronological order all the way back to when ProTax launched. So you can see all the different things that have been released since the launch of ProTax. Okay, purchasing ProTax. The way that ProTax works when you are using and purchasing it is it's a subscription-based model that is an annual subscription. So when you sign up to ProTax, you get a full year's worth of unlimited tax returns that you and your team can prepare. And it's based on the module that you purchase. As I mentioned, you can also purchase bundles and suites for a different additional savings with ProTax, and that gives you the same annual subscription for unlimited tax returns. Intuit has also released with ProTax the one-pay option. So if you were just looking to kind of try it out and you just have, maybe you've got a lot of T1 clients, but you only have one T2 client, for example, you can purchase the one-pay option and file just single tax returns using that option as well. Okay, so what years does ProTax cover? I see that I didn't update this slide from the February 24th webinar that I did. That was when T1 season officially opened this year for 2024 tax returns, personal tax returns. That opened February 24th, so that is now open. ProTax T1 covers from 2018 to 2024. So it goes all the way back to 2018 if you're filing T1 tax returns for your clients. And then if you are in the T2, the corporate tax environment, you can go all the way back to 2015 when using ProTax. ProTax, the CRA allows e-filing, I think back to 2017, I believe, for both T1s and T2s. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's back to 2017 that you can e-file. We'll be talking about e-filing today as well. And a really important note, the Canadian government had done this things with capital gains changes for 2024. The Trudeau government had looked at increasing the capital gains to 2/3 above certain limits, which then meant that the CRA had to redo all of the forms in relation to that. That looks like it's since been repealed to January of 2026. We're not sure if it's going to continue that this capital gains increase or not for the 2025 year. So we're in a little bit of limbo there. I know that we do have a possible election coming up, so that may change depending on the party that's elected. But for the 2024 tax year, that has been changed so there is no capital gains changes for 2024. What that has caused is that the CRA hasn't yet updated all of the forms for 2024. So if you are filing clients' personal tax returns that have capital gains in them, you may not yet be able to file those tax returns on ProTax or Profile or any tax program that is compliant with the CRA until those forms have been updated. Just 2 days ago, I was working on a client's tax return, attempting to file their personal tax return, and was not able to do so yet because the CRA has not updated those forms, which means that the tax programs haven't been able to update their forms yet either. So as part of that, the CRA is delaying filing on clients that have capital gains or whatever they mention in here, but the primary thing is the capital gains. until June 2nd. Sounds like there's going to be no penalties or interest. I encourage you to look that up yourself and to make sure that you are comfortable in understanding that yourself as well. But just wanted to let you know, if you are running into any issues with filing clients' tax returns that have capital gains, there is this delay that the CRA has on that. Okay. Karina is saying, will we receive the link to this recording in the email? I don't think it's going to be in the email. Yeah, Tanya, feel free to answer that. Thank you. Tanya Franelik is also helping us out from Intuit. So thank you, Tanya. If not, I'm going to go through where you can find this recording and previous recordings as well. Okay, I talked about getting help in ProTax. So in QuickBooks Online Accountant, or QBOA, you will always see the help button at the top. Now, when you are in ProTax itself, that is not the help button that you want to use when you are doing clients' tax returns. Because this is basically the help that is related to QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Online Accountant. As you can see on the left-hand bar there, when you are in QBOA, from there you can access ProTax on the left-hand side. Once you click on that, you will be taken into the ProTax environment. It'll give you the dashboard for ProTax. Then once you create a new client's tax return or go into an existing one, and you are in that tax return, you will then see this blue bubble pop up at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. That is the direct ProTax help. And ProTax is really important, what's the word? They want to ensure that you have easy access to help. So when you click on that blue bubble, you have different support options. You can chat directly with a support agent. So if you're used to doing it via chat, you can call ProTax and get support there. You can also visit the online hub help, and you can also connect on Facebook. And I know that ProTax was providing 15-minute free calls to anyone who is looking to switch to ProTax. So there's also that option to you as well. I think that's still relevant. I'm pretty sure they're staying with that because it is such a helpful resource, especially for those that want to move to ProTax. If you have a smartphone, I would say take a look at this QR code. This also gives you access to a lot of the videos that are out there with ProTax. Most of them are under 5 minutes long. And it's a really good way to learn a certain part of ProTax, such as how to e-file individual forms, how do you create a coupled form in ProTax. So really helpful videos there. Okay, so we're going through setting things up in ProTax. When we are starting with ProTax, we want to go into the tax settings area. So what you're seeing here is the dashboard of ProTax. So when you are on QuickBooks Online Accountant and you click on ProTax on the left-hand side, you will be taken to the dashboard. So this is before you are in any client tax return. And then on the top right, you'll see the tax settings button. That gives you a bunch of different global options within ProTax. So we'll be going through each of those as well. First of those is the e-file tab. Very important to register as an e-filer because that allows you to electronically file your client's tax returns. You don't have to mail them in anymore. And the CRA is getting pretty sticky about not accepting paper copies as well. So it's really important to become an e-filer. That is where you enter your e-file number and the password once you receive it from the CRA. Just some information. Filing and becoming an e-filer, it can take up to 60 days to meet the suitability screening credentials for it. So apply now if you haven't already applied, because it does take a while to become certified as an e-filer. And what else was I going to say on that? Oh, just Google e-file CRA. Make sure you are on the Canada.ca website when you are doing that so that you can sign up to be an e-filer. and it is a pretty simple sign-up process. It just takes time to get approved. Also note that there is a yearly renewal requirement when you are an e-filer, so you have to renew each year. Again, it's like fairly simple, but it does take time. So I always encourage people to sign up in October or November each year to kind of get prepared for tax season. Also, something that's really handy, if you click the sign in on your e-file, then you can see all of the different returns that you've e-filed. So it gives you access to your transmission history. This is also where you can renew your account as well. Something that's different than being an e-filer, but is just as important, is becoming a representative. So represent a client, or RAC, gives you what's called a rep ID. You also have to sign up with the CRA and get approved on this, but this allows you to access your client's information online. We're going to be talking about tomorrow using T1 Autofill My Return, which is an almost instantaneous filling out of your client's tax returns with any information that the CRA has on your clients, such as T4s, T5s, RSP limits, things like that. Save yourself the time of manual entry. Become a representative. You also have to get your client's authorization for each client that you're becoming a representative for. So it differs a little bit when you're an e-filer. As long as you get your client to sign a T183 form before you e-file their tax return, that's all you need to do with your client to be able to electronically file their tax return with their permission. Each client you need to get authorization for if you want to be represent a client. So if you want to represent them and then log in online and see what the CRA has on them, any info, or if you want to use the autofill my return. So two different elements that you want to get approved for both of them. And then you also always want to have your client's authorization as well. Okay. So the other tab, one of the other tabs in the tax settings, that's a prepare information tab. I talked about represent a client and getting a rep ID. So this representative ID is where you enter that into the top there. That allows you to pull the information on your clients directly from the CRA. In the corporate tax environment, if you're in Alberta or your client is in Alberta, you need to get third-party service provider information access to that. That's where you can enter that. One of the other tabs talks about the T3 or your forms expert transmission tab, entering that. The print tab, this is where you can create different print sets for your clients, for example. So, printing out their tax returns. This is where you can do that. And then you can also have those tax returns printed out within the print set and have a password attached to them. Because what this does is that these print sets basically create a PDF file for your clients. If by chance you are sending the tax return over email is a very insecure method of sending information. So especially if you have sensitive client information on that and you're sending that out over email, you want to make sure that those PDFs are password protected. And ProTax has the ability to automatically password protect those PDFs. So really important for that. I talked a little bit about the letters before. I talked about getting an engagement letter from your clients. That is something that you absolutely want to do for every client. Within ProTax, you have the letters tab, and you can create customized templates and customized letters, as well as the templates that are all already there for you. So very easy to do that. Jane has a question. Would you recommend ProTax for me? I'm a self-employed bookkeeper, is thinking it might be a good choice for filing my own taxes to start while I learn. Yes, absolutely. You can file your own. It works a little bit differently when you are in the QBOA environment and you are filing. You won't necessarily have the same steps as using a client's file, but you can still map all of your chart of accounts and export those to ProTax and then use ProTax to file. So absolutely, hands down, I would recommend that for you, Jane. Okay, so back to the letters tab. The way that the letters, like word processor, I guess you would say, works, it is just like a word processor. You create a letter or you copy one of the templates that are there already. Any text that you want to continually appear as the same in this letter, you just type it out like in a word processor. Any fields that you want to have autofill, such as like client name, years, things like that, you just drag and drop those from the right-hand side into your letter template. So really easy just to use the drag and drop functionality. Okay, something else in the options tab. We have the live auditor mode and the quick mode. Quick mode allows you, if you have a really low internet bandwidth, it allows the processing to happen not instantaneously, which then speeds up the loading of things. I assume that most of us have relatively good internet, especially if you're watching here and you're watching a video, you likely have relatively good internet access. So you would likely leave that quick mode toggled off. The live auditor is an extension to ProTax's auditor. The auditor allows, it's basically a self-check system that can spot any errors or omissions or problems with tax returns. Super, super powerful feature of ProTax. If you have the live auditor enabled, it highlights each cell with an orange border around it and instantly lets you know that there might be something wrong with that field or that cell, such as social insurance numbers that are incorrect, things like that. ProTax Labs are the features that aren't necessarily yet released, and they're still in beta format. That allows you to test those things out. Something that I like, the form colors here. If you're dealing with spousal tax returns, then you can have one spouse's return as a different color than the others, so you can easily toggle back and forth between them, and then you just have a good visual indicator there. Okay, so introduction to ProTax, importing T1 files. Very easy to import files. It depends on what tax software you're using. If you have been using Profile in the past, Profile is the desktop-based version of Intuit's tax program. And if you've been using Profile in the past, you can import all of those returns into ProTax, and then carry them forward if, for example, you're importing the prior year tax returns. Very easy to do within ProTax. So all you have to do is click on Import Returns, and then you choose the tax app that you are importing from. You then can select up to 7 returns at a time, and you can either just browse and use your Windows Explorer, your Forms Explorer, or you can drag and drop the returns onto this screen and then import them from there. Once you have them showing there, you just click on Next. And then because QuickBooks Online Accountant is a client database, you then can match those uploaded returns to an existing client in your client database, or you can create a new client within that client database as well. That allows for very easy things like invoicing your clients as well, and just, again, that client database component. And note that you can also name the returns anything you want to. Your firm might have certain naming conventions that you want to use when you are naming clients' tax returns. So you might have to follow those, but ProTax makes it pretty easy and very flexible to name those returns as you'd like. Once you click the next button, then you can view the return. It'll say that the returns have been all uploaded, and then you will see them in your ProTax dashboard. That is your an example, a screenshot of what your dashboard looks like. So in the dashboard, you can choose between T1, T2, T3, FX, and then we're going to be talking a little bit today about the e-signature, the Intuit Sign component, which is a handy feature that is included with ProTax absolutely free. Okay, you can also carry forward tax returns year to year. So if you've prepared tax returns within ProTax, so if you've used ProTax in the prior year, say 2023, and you want to carry forward those returns to 2024, you can absolutely do that. And you can do that in bulk as well. So you don't have to do each return at a time. You can do it in bulk. And just note that importing is not the same as carrying forward. So if you have used Profile in the past, so if you've used Profile for using your 2023 tax return, then you would import that into ProTax, and then you would carry that forward to 2024. Justin is asking about information from TurboTax to be imported. I think there is a way to do it from TurboTax as well. That is in the help section of ProTax, so you can get help in that importing the different returns. And if I have a chance, I'll go to that today too. Okay, so getting started, if we are creating a tax return within ProTax, so directly in ProTax, you have the option in ProTax, you click the create a new return. It has a drop down. There you have two options. This is when we're just in the T1 environment, remember. You have the regular T1 personal tax return or the T1 self-employed tax return. So you have the ability to create just a regular tax return for like salaried salaried clients. So employees, ones that don't have self-employment income. If they have self-employment income, that tax return will need to include the T2125 business activity statement, which is their self-employed profit and loss statement. So you have the ability to do both of those. This is where if you are using work papers on a self-employed client, that's where that is important as well. Okay, from there, you will see on the right-hand side, if you have that self-employed client, that is where you will pull the information from the QuickBooks client work papers, that T2125 mapping. We're going to go into mapping more tomorrow, or you can start a blank tax return. Okay, so once you create the tax return, you will see the client's tax return as in this screenshot here. This basically gives you an overview of what it looks like. When ProTax opens, it opens into the T1 Express or the T1 worksheet. Really handy worksheet, the T1 Express. It basically takes most of the elements of a personal tax return and includes it on one worksheet to make it really easy for you to enter all of the information. Also want to talk about the quick bar. So the go-to that you see in bubble number 1, this is a really powerful function. A search function allows you to add forms, view forms, look at line numbers, search, anything like that. Really powerful because you can search things like investment income. If you don't remember that that's a T5 or whatever. Gives you a really powerful way to search in ProTax. Number 2 shows documents. So you can attach documents to any client's tax return. Really, really handy and powerful part of ProTax. So if you say have your client say this is a self-employed client and you have a printout of their P&L and you want to attach it. If you have certain information on your client that relates to this tax return, things that I can think of, such as donation receipts, medical expense receipts, things like that, you can attach all of those to your client's specific tax return. And the beauty of this, because ProTax is in the cloud environment, the beauty is that these documents are available to you 24/7 from anywhere in the world as long as you have an internet connection. So if you need to access those documents from anywhere, they're always there. And note that when you're attaching documents, in the general sense, these documents do not transfer to the CRA. So you can attach any documents that you want to. There are specific examples of forms that you are filing that you may want to, or that you're sending to the CRA that may be part of the forms expert, things like that, that then you can have the documents attached and sent. But in general, in a T1 tax return, these are not sent to the CRA. So they're just for your own personal or your clients or your team members' personal use when doing the tax return. And then number 3, add a new form, slip, or letter. That's a really easy way to do it by clicking that button. Note that you can also do that through the go-to search capabilities. So this gives an example of that. So as I talked about, as soon as you click that on the right-hand side, you'll see, what are we going to search for? We're typing investment. You're like, oh, what form has the investment income? And that's the T5. If it already isn't included on your specific client's tax return, then you will have the ability to add that form right there. Other actions that you can do in the quick bar, you can print your return, you can share. So if you're used to Googling things or using keywords to search things in different apps or programs, this is exactly what the quick bar is all about in ProTax. Okay, getting authorized. So I talked about the CRA's Represent a Client program. The CRA has made a lot of changes to that program, so you always want to update visit their website to learn the newest on the updates for the representative client. In the T1 environment, you have the ability in ProTax directly to print out the form for your client, have them sign it, and then get authorized directly through ProTax. So the benefit, again, of being authorized is that then you can go to the CRA's website and see all the information that your CRA has on your client. And that's historical information as well. So it is a really, really handy function. It saves you a ton of time versus having to ask your client. Your client might not know. Then you call the CRA, you're waiting on hold. This way you can go directly online and view all of your client's information. Again, tomorrow we're going to be talking about autofill your client's return, so you can instantly pull that information that the CRA has as well. Okay. Oh, and this just shows on the right-hand side here, the authorizer representative. So this is, you print this form and then you submit that form, or you print this form, you get your client's signature, so very important. And then in ProTax, you can go directly in there and request that authorization from the CRA and get it almost instantaneously. Okay, so let's go into a basic T1. I've given you a little bit of an idea about the T1 and some of the navigation. We've seen the quick bar as I mentioned in area number 1. We've talked about the attaching documents feature in number 2. Other things here, it shows the bubble in number 3 and number 4 for the live auditor and the quick mode. That has now moved to the tax settings area, which I talked about when you were in the ProTax dashboard. That is the live auditor and quick mode now appear there instead of on your client's tax return. Other things in the navigation part of your client's tax return, we see forms and then auditor. Forms basically gives you the list of all the forms that are on your client's tax return. Again, you can add forms if you don't see them there. The auditor, that's that very important reviewer or auditor of your client's tax returns that can point out different errors, omissions, things when you were doing your client's tax return. So it's basically like a helper that kind of helps guide you through things that might be wrong with your client's tax return that you want to solve before you are e-filing it. The data input and the PDF form. So the data input is where you input all of your client's information. PDF form gives you a way of viewing the tax return as it properly appears. So that's how it will appear if you are printing out a PDF of your client's tax return. Also at the top shows you the taxable income for your client, the amount of income that is taxable for your client, and then we'll also show you a balance owing or a refund on your client's tax return, as well as the e-file status, if it is eligible for e-file or not eligible for e-file. I talked a little bit before about the T1 Express feature. This gives you the ability to enter data on a single worksheet, and it has the most popular T1 forms and schedules. I talked about the T4s, the T5s, donations, medical expenses. So all of those really popular forms and schedules that appear in most clients' tax returns. So to access that T1 Express, just make sure you are in the client's tax return, and then you will see the T1 Express form on your left-hand side. Bubble number 2 just shows the information that you're entering on the client's stuff, e-filing information, and then you've got the view details as well if you wish to review each form on a separate page. Okay, so what am I talking about in this screen? Oh, the live auditor. So that orange border that I talked about, that is when you have the live auditor enabled. That again is found in your tax settings. For example, here, we just have the social insurance number for this client is 8. Well, obviously it's a 9-digit number. So ProTax is saying here, oh, looks like something is wrong with this taxpayer's social insurance number, and it's highlighting it in orange. And then to enable that, that is where you have the quick mode and the live auditor mode in the tax settings area. So here it's circled around the quick mode, but that would be the live auditor mode. Make sure that's toggled on at the top there. Okay, already talked about adding a form. This is kind of a screenshot of the T5 again. This screen talks about the auditor in a little bit more detail. So once we click on the auditor, we can see that there are 11 issues that we need to potentially solve with this auditor. I said issues, but actually it's broken out into 4 different areas. We have issues, warnings, sign-offs, and overrides. So the issues are the most detrimental things, the most serious things in preventing you from e-filing your client's tax return that you definitely need to look at. Warnings are areas that are just saying, okay, looks like something could be incorrect. You might want to pay attention to this. Very common ones are like what's shown as the top here, box 18, EI premiums. So for example, if the EI premiums or CPP premiums are shown as higher than what was expected by ProTax, that's something that you might want to look into. If they look okay, then you can just click on that little check mark and it will turn green and remove that warning. Sign-offs, that's things like preparer and reviewer. And then overrides, if ProTax is calculating a cell and you've overridden that cell, that will appear in the overrides function. If you want to remove an override, you can then click on the little trash bar that appears on that. I will also show you another way of removing overrides as well. And then I talked about the PDF forms, so being the toggle between the data input and the PDF form. PDF form allows you to see the tax return exactly as it is. So that's a really handy review before you're finalizing a tax return, and it lets you see how the client will see it once it's printed off as a PDF. That is the way our tax returns appear that we are used to. Okay, I have 5 minutes left, so I am going to speed through here. Wrapping it up, tomorrow we will be going in depth into the return actions drop-down menu, basically just showing you today that you can print forms or letters. You can also print the tax returns for clients there as well. Okay, something that I want to highlight before we finish today as well is Intuit Sign for ProTax. This allows tax forms to be electronically signed by your clients. It works directly in ProTax. Something really important to note is that it's CRA compliant. So versus something like DocuSign that is, a very universal document signing, electronically document signing an app. But Intuit Sign that's built directly into ProTax is CRA compliant. So really important to note that when you are getting clients to sign forms electronically, you want to make sure that they comply with what the CRA says. So ProTax's Intuit Sign is built directly in with that, and it is included at no additional cost. The way it works is when you are in a client's tax return, you click on the requests e-signature at the top right. Then you can select the forms that you want your client to sign. Here, for example, is authorized rep and a T183. On T183s before you're e-filing, as well as authorization, you want to ensure you get your client's signatures on those. So you just check off the ones that you want to include. You click next. Then it takes you through a workflow of what you're going to be getting signed, who is going to be the recipient. Also has the ability to send reminders. So really important in a productivity or efficiency way. You can have those reminders sent out automatically to your clients saying, hey, remember, you got to sign these forms. And then allowing you to review and send what the email is going to look like to your clients. You can also click that preview signature email and see exactly what it's going to look like. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth tomorrow as well. When you were on the dashboard, so this is the ProTax dashboard again. This is the T1, T2, T3, FX, and the e-signature. That's where all of the items that you've sent out for e-signature are showing. So it'll show the status as well, if they've been sent, if you've received them back, and then once you've received them, you can download them. And then a handy tip is I always say, once you've downloaded them, use that documents function in ProTax to attach those signed documents to the tax return. Okay. E-filing. So really, really important function that's included directly in ProTax is the ability to e-file your client's tax returns. Once you have the tax return completed and reviewed and ready to e-file, very easy to do that. On the bottom left, you see file a return. You're about to submit a T1 return to the CRA. And then you just click accept and file return. And then you'll see once it has been filed, you'll see the T1 return successfully filed. I say print that off and then use that attach documents function in ProTax to attach that to the tax return as well. Yes, Carolina, the presentation, I will show you how to access those. I only have a couple minutes left, so I will go through that very, very quickly. Just want to show you, and I'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow, the different colors and indicators that are part of the cells within ProTax. And I talked about deleting overridden cells in the auditor part, but you can also delete them by clearing the contents and tabbing out. Okay, ProTax resources, just a bunch of resources that are available to you within ProTax. You can click on that what's new to access that information as well. Okay, I'm going to very quickly jump into ProTax. So here we are actually in QuickBooks Accountant. Note that we don't see the books to tax here. That's because we have to be in a client's tax return to see that. So again, just note that. We're going to ProTax here. Actually, just before I go to ProTax, I'm going to go into ProAdvisor, training. That's where you can sign up for tomorrow's webinar. That is where you can access some of the previous webinars as well. So just important to note that. Okay, so here we are in ProTax itself. This is where we create our tax returns. This is where we do the tax settings. What else was I going to show you? It's now just quickly escaped my mind. Oh, how to access the webinars. If you Google, I think it is under, let me just find it here in the last minute. I think it is under Intuit Accountants Canada YouTube. I'm gonna try Googling that. Yes, so that it appears here. So this is where you can find all of the videos of the past. Tons of different videos relating to QuickBooks Online, as well as videos that relate to ProTax as well. So that's a YouTube channel for Intuit Accountants Canada. All right, well, we are out of time. Hope to see some of you tomorrow. Really enjoyed teaching you the webinar. Really enjoyed your questions today. Thank you so much and have a great rest of your day. Hope to see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.